Good morning, everyone. I am super excited to be here at my very first FIX conference. Woo! And although I stand on this stage alone, I know I'm surrounded by the strength of the women who have shared their stories, who have endured incredible hardships, and who now stand united to change the world. Tick-tock, tick-tock. That was the sound in my head when my former boss came to me and said, I need you to come to my office, I have a quick question. I tried to think of some witty response really quickly about why I wasn't able to do that at the moment. You know, I've got a conference call, or I have to go pee. I always had to go pee. But nothing came to mind. So I slowly started to get up and I started to walk over to his office. And in my head, I'm thinking, how many more seconds before he says something inappropriate yet again? How many more minutes do I have to actually stay in his office? How many more years is he going to be my boss? The ticking continued, and I walked into his office, and he put his hand on his door and he closed the door behind me. Why do you need to close the door behind me if this is a quick question? I thought, Rhonda, get out. Come on, make up something for why you need to leave. But he was my boss, and what was that going to do to my career? He proceeded to tell me about how much he loved black women, especially young black women with long legs. I looked down. Of course, this is the day I'm wearing a skirt. So I thought, did I bring this on myself? Is this all my fault? He then proceeded to lay his hand on my leg and say to me how much fun it would be if I could come to his apartment and we could work on my career together. I did that stupid little sound I do when I get nervous, and I do this stupid little giggle, and I was like, which I was really afraid was gonna be encouragement to him to keep going. The silence in my head was only broken by the next sound, the intercom. It was his assistant buzzing him saying, you have an urgent call, you have to take it right now. To this day, I have no idea who was on that urgent call. I don't actually know if there even was an urgent call or if his assistant just saw what was gonna happen or knew what was gonna happen, but I used it as my opportunity to make an exit, to promise myself that I would never go back in his office alone again, no matter what he was gonna do for my career. In 2018, the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine released a 313-page report on sexual harassment. 313 pages. Now, the findings are disturbing to say the least, but I think I want to draw your attention to a few of those conclusions. Number one, sexual harassment, we all think we know what it is. Sexual harassment is the unwanted sexual attention. It is the sexual coercion. But it's also gender harassment. Gender harassment are those nonverbal and verbal behaviors that make you feel like an object, that are hostile, and that make you feel excluded. And if you had to think between sexual attention, sexual coercion, and gender harassment, which one of those do you guys think was the most common? Gender harassment. That's what NASM concluded. That's what we experience most often. Number two, sexual harassment is common. Greater than 50% of women faculty and staff in academia report experiencing gender harassment. And for medical students, nearly half of them say they've experienced gender harassment. Just imagine if at the incoming white coat ceremony, if the dean got up to the podium and said, now, look to the woman to the left of you, and look to the woman to the right of you. It's one of my colleagues wrote in an article recently. And instead, here's where you think the dean's gonna make this amazing prediction about who's gonna cure cancer or who's gonna have some revolutionary accomplishment. And instead, the dean says, on average, one of you will be sexually harassed before you graduate from medical school. That's not the level of honesty that we actually give to our medical students today. Number three, sexual harassment is a problem, particularly in medicine. And the two characteristics of environments that are most consistent with sexual harassment happening are male-dominated gender ratios and leadership, and two, an organizational climate that communicates tolerance of sexual harassment. And the greatest predictor of sexual harassment happening, that organizational climate. Well, that doesn't seem too surprising. So you're trying to tell me that if somebody thinks they can get away with something, they're actually going to do it? I think we all know that that is exactly the environments in which we all have worked in before. So if NASEM was the wake-up call for many organizations, Time's Up Healthcare is the organization that is the blaring alarm without a snooze button to say that time is up. I'm a proud founding member of Time's Up Healthcare. Founded by 50 women and over a dozen advisors, we are a diverse group of women who are committed to bringing safety, equity, and dignity to our workplaces. Safety, equity, and dignity. Now let's break each of those words down a little bit. Safety, that concept of feeling safe. In a recent New York Times article that recently was written, they said any energy that we spend not feeling safe is energy that we don't have available to us to create value. Time's Up Healthcare is working to make our organizations safer. Because right now we have flagrant examples of abusive and discriminatory behavior for our workers. Look at this somewhat busy slide by Catherine Clancy and her colleagues, and what she did was she interviewed online, did an online survey, and had the workers actually fill out whether or not they had experienced comments, attacks, and as you can see, the blue dots are the men, the red dots are the women, and yes, men experienced it as well, but clearly more women than men. And I think more importantly, or equally important to what the women experienced, is also the number of women who didn't know what to do when they had experienced something. And the final block, which shows you that people were not satisfied by the outcomes of their reporting. Time's Up Healthcare is looking to address the spectrum of these issues for all healthcare workplaces. If you are involved in direct patient care, sexual harassment is not something you only have to worry about from your supervisors or your colleagues. It's also from your patients. In a study of over 800 physicians, the physicians reported that almost 40% of their perpetrators were their patients or their patients' relatives. Now imagine you worked really, really hard to get to where you are today. And you go to work every single day to do the amazing job that you do, and you also have to worry about your own personal safety. Time's Up Healthcare is also acknowledging that it's not just about the workers in the healthcare workforce, it's also about the impact of gender inequities and gender bias on our patients and their safety. Now, if this article title does not grab you, I don't know what does. Surgeons in Ontario, Canada recently found a small but statistically significant decrease in mortality for patients treated by female surgeons. And another research article recently published showed that men and women who suffered from heart attacks fared better when taken care of by female doctors. The last point about safety reminds me of a saying, there's safety in numbers. Now I'm going to be honest, when I first got the phone call about Time's Up Healthcare, I remember thinking, this is going to be amazing. It's going to be awesome. And then I paused. I thought, is this going to be another one of those organizations or those movements where women of color and women of sexual and gender minorities are at the back? Is that going to be another one of those opportunities? And I can firmly attest and tell you that Time's Up Healthcare is not one of those organizations. Not only is intersectionality valued, it's prioritized, because our leaders know that there is no change without real change, and real change involves all of us. Equity. That process of being fair, not equal, but fair. Our workplaces are not equitable. In 2018, Doximity reported on the Physician Compensation Report, there is no field where women physicians earn more than male physicians. And something that I found even more shocking, but maybe these days I should find nothing shocking, that male nurses who make up 12% of the nursing workforce, on average, make more than $6,000 than women nurses. That concept of equity goes beyond compensation. These days, greater than 50% of medical students are female, but deans only make up 16% of that number for women. Linos and her colleagues gave us the amusing, yet frustrating concept of the mustache index, noting that although it's rare, only about 15% of men may have a mustache, the colleagues hypothesized that women in leadership positions at the top 50 NIH-funded institutions would be more rare than that. And unfortunately, their hypothesis was correct. Dignity. The state of being worthy of honor or respect. Our workplaces are not dignified. Because we right now have workplaces where if you are successful, if you're driven, if you're competent, you can't also be liked. Think of the Columbia business case study where the students were given the case of Heidi Roizen and Howard Roizen. Heidi is a successful venture capitalist. Half the students got her case study. The name was changed to Howard, and the other half of the class got Howard's. Everybody thought that Heidi and Howard were both very competent. But the students did not want to work for Heidi, they didn't like Heidi, and they didn't want to hire her. If we have a situation where agentic traits are revered in men, but disliked in women, then we do not have workplaces that are worthy of our respect. And imagine, how can we have workplaces worthy of our respect where women who choose motherhood have to face the penalty that comes along with that, while men enjoy the financial perks of paternity? And it's not just the financial piece of that. It's also the gendered job expectations, the lack of support, as well as the limited advancement. And the outrage that recently happened when breastfeeding women in an OBGYN conference couldn't get into their own conference because they decided to bring their babies. How can we have dignified workplaces when we have things like that? Finally, the emotional, physical, and mental toll that is taken upon women who deal with harassment and discrimination and consistent patterns of inequity is overwhelming. Depression, stress, and anxiety are all things that we face when we happen to work in places that are not safe, not equitable, and not dignified. Time's Up Healthcare is also looking to help the survivors of all of this. Because as physicians, as healthcare workers, we take care of the people who are dealing with this. And so we are in a unique position to also contribute to that dialogue and to work on systemic solutions to make the world better for all of our healthcare workplaces. Safe, equitable, and dignified. 3 principles that Time's Up Healthcare is working to bring to all of our workplaces. Because I'm tired of watching men who behave badly get promoted, or better yet, get passed from institution to institution. I'm angry every single time I see a woman. Every single time I see a woman who has to choose between her career and motherhood. I don't know about you, but I don't want to have to choose between being successful and being liked, or being competent and being called a bitch. The clock has run out on all of this, and I think the world of healthcare better get ready, because time's up. Thank you.